All right, guys, as it starts off, one of the things I wanted to kind of show you guys right up here at the very top, you'll be getting this, but you can also make a little note of it, that the update, we have a video by Ashley Strauss Martin. For those of you who do not know Ashley, Ashley is our legal beagle, if you will. She's our head of the legal advisory group out in for New Mexico Association of Realtors, okay, for NMAR. And she sends out updates constantly, and she talks about a lot of contracts. And I have talked to a few brokers who say, oh, I never look at her stuff. And, you know, I'm telling you, you need to, because she is the person with the word. So a lot of times you'll see in here, I'm going to get out of this for 1 second. Okay. And I am going to share one other page with you guys. If I can get on all this. Give me fits. Here it is. I don't want that one. There we go. Sorry about that. Says share screens. Okay, hang on, guys. I apologize.
Tom, is this your first time on Zoom?
Yeah, you would think so. It looks like that, huh? It's just one of those things. All of a sudden, it just jumped out at me, Pam. Here we go. There it is. Now, hopefully you can all see my website. You can always go to tomtrujillorealestate.com, and you'll see at the very tail end of here, there's some classes, the broker's class. When I'm talking about Ashley, if you just go out here to the PA update 221 or 2121, up comes her video. All right, so that's a pretty simple thing for everybody to do. And there's Ashley. The reason I tell everybody that is because a lot of times I refer back to Ashley's video. So you'll see purchase agreement tells you how to go to there, Tom Trujillo Real Estate, brokers classes, PA update, and I have time stamped all of the sections that are new. And I'll show you when we get a few minutes as we get into the contract. The other one you'll see here is highlighted in pink or purple, and that's the NMR forms are highlighted. All right. So the truth be said is that we actually have a combination of an additional 32 either addendums, info sheets that could go with this particular purchase agreement. That's a lot. Now, of course, you don't use them all, but you might have septic, or you might have an HOA, or you might have various other ones. And that's when you get the annotated, you'll be able to see exactly what other documents that you want to attach to your purchase agreement. Okay, so we're not going to beat it up too long, but we're going to start right off here. Of course, this is our part one, the broker's duties disclosure. We've seen this for many years. It's changed over the years. They've changed for some of those people who haven't been in the biz for a little while. You'll see it's just not one old full page. You've actually created 2 sections. But there are some things in here that I like to point out, particularly to all the brokers. And it basically says broker's duty to all buyers and sellers. Okay. And of course, we know the honesty, reasonable, and ethical personal conduct. And I'll tell you guys, one of the biggest issues I'm dealing with these days is professional conduct. And I say it's because right now we're so tight on inventory that the bottom line is that a lot of people aren't being real nice. Now, that is not who we are at Keller Williams. You be nice and go the extra mile, because I guarantee you, as the old saying goes, you get a lot more flies with honey than a lot of the other way around. And 9 times out of 10, I land up getting in conversations with other QBs because people aren't playing nice, okay? So these are those things, and particularly the new brokers, you have to be in compliance with the law, local and state, and all the fair housing discriminations, performance of all and any written agreements, new brokers. That isn't, you know, make a phone call and say, yeah, we'll do this. That means you have it in writing. And of course, written disclosure of any potential conflicts of interest. So if you happen to be a brother, maybe even as far as a cousin, or if you may be cohabitating, you have that responsibility of saying you have some conflicts of interest with that. All right. When you start getting down to, second, third, fourth cousins and so forth, I wouldn't really worry about it a lot. It's just those people that you're very immediate with. Okay? Here's another one, all materials, interest, relationships, or business, personal, or family nature. You can see that. So if you're buying it for your dad as a business investment, make sure you disclose that kind of stuff, okay? And of course, one of those that seem to trip people up, any written agreement the broker has with a transaction coordinator, okay? You must disclose if you are using a transaction coordinator. So if you've hired Paula Travis as your transaction coordinator, you'll see further down in the agreement that indeed she has to be put in the agreement as your transaction coordinator. This other one here, written disclosure of any adverse material facts. And material facts are what you know. So we just had an earlier conversation with Beth on, and we'll get a little further into it, is when you did the inspection. The new rules now say you do not send the entire inspection report back to that listing broker. Okay, let me say it again. You do not send the entire inspection report back to the listing broker. Only those items that you object. Now, if you happen to be the listing broker and you get a full inspection report, do not open it, because at that point you may have knowledge of material facts. Instead, send it back to the broker and says, the new rules basically state you do not send me the entire inspection report. And we get a lot of people, the question of, well, I love doing that because all we did was just ask them to fix the faucets in the kitchen. But we wanted them to see all the problems in the house. That's not the rule. You say, here's a material fact, is the kitchen sink needs new faucets, and that's all you should be getting. Okay. Let's go to section B. I love A particularly because these are your broker's duties to your buyers. A, timely presentation of and responses to all written offers or counter offers. Big word, timely presentation. You guys know how big I am that once you get that purchase agreement signed, you start putting together a calendar and you live by that calendar. I just have been dealing with two particular brokers from our office who are actually dealing with brokers out of Albuquerque. In truth, one broker, it got caught up with their lender, and it was an FHA loan. And before you know it, they missed the deadline for an appraisal. The Albuquerque broker, guess what? They terminated. They wanted to terminate. Just got another one just today. I've been working through it. Hopefully we can get it worked out. The broker had already received the pre-approval letter from the lender. It was due on the 18th. She got the letter on the 18th. She thought she sent it. Then guess what? Comes rolling around this past Sunday, the 26th, and she got a termination agreement from the other broker saying, you missed your deadline. I am terminating and we want all the earnest money back. That's a little picky from the days that all of us have been doing real estate in Santa Fe and various areas. But the reason people are so picky is that we don't have any listings. So people are very confident that, if you don't follow the letter by the law, you have the potential of losing it. Now we have a few things going on a little further down in terms of default notices that are new. But at this point, always, always, always make sure you do timely. So, that will be the first question I ask you. If you call me up and say, Tom, they want to give me a termination letter because I missed sending something to them, I will say, do you have a calendar? Okay. Couple things that help us out a little bit. This is that when you get into a situation that the party must agree in writing that the broker is not expected to provide such services, advice, or assistance beyond the scope of a broker. Stay in your lane. I get it. We all do this. We all love the fact of helping our brokers, our clients. Next thing they're asking you is, do you think that you can go and take care of my house for 3 or 4 days while we're out of here? Wait a minute, what kind of agreement do you have? Are you a property manager? Same thing goes even when you start giving them names of plumbers, roofers, so forth. Minimum of 3, and you're still potentially in danger if they come back and say, well, you know what? Susan told me that this was the best roofer in town, so I listened to her, and now we got a lawsuit. So you'll see as we move through here that the seller, and you have to express it to the seller as we move through this agreement, that it is their responsibility, okay? Advise to consult with an attorney. Guess why we have so many addendums and amendments? Is because too many of us have decided that the amendment is the answer for everything. And so we start writing our own amendment that is going to maybe, hopefully, get the deal through. Problem is, if you're writing over 3 sentences, you're being an attorney. Trust me. Hence be the reason that it turns out these days that we have all these addendums and amendments, not because Ashley Martin wants to be writing them. It's because too many things have fallen through the weight, gone to the wayside, and before you know it, you have lawsuits. All right. Acknowledgement by the broker that there may be matters related to transactions that are outside the broker's knowledge or expertise. There you go. Stay in your lane. Advise to consult an attorney if you need to. You start getting way over your head, you're even getting over my head. A lot of times people call me and says, well, Tom, do you think we're legal? My answer to them is, I wouldn't have an idea. I'm not an attorney. What I do know is this contract, but I will never act as an attorney. And at the very least, you should not act as an attorney. Okay. New brokers. We are transaction brokers. We are not exclusive agency here. We are transaction brokers. So sometimes you'll get somebody from the East and saying, well, aren't you my agent? No, I am your transaction broker. That means that I don't have a fiduciary responsibility to you. I will honor you, but I can't speak for you and you can't speak for me. That's the difference. All right. Same thing happens with dual agency. We really don't have dual agency. And sometimes you'll do a double-sided deal. So you're basically acting as transaction coordinator to both sides. All right. Unless otherwise in writing, the seller, okay, shall not disclose that the seller sales price is being maybe a lesser price. So if your seller tells you, hey, Beth, you know what, we're going to list this house for that, blah, blah, blah. But I'll tell you what, we really would take, $575 instead of $600. You do not communicate that. That's kind of a no-brainer, right? Besides, you don't want to hurt your commission anyway. Last one here, unless otherwise authorized in writing, broker who is directly providing real estate shall not disclose that they'll pay a higher price or lower price or anything that is potentially confidential. I mean, these are kind of no-brainers, but believe you me, they seem to be no-brainers for everybody else, but I'll tell you, I am always amazed how many phone calls I get on stuff like, he told you that? Really? Oh, okay. Now we're going to get in the meat of things. Things changed up a little bit, Susan, since the last time you've probably written the contract. We've changed things. But this here, for those of you who are new brokers, when you see things in red, that kind of helps you along when you're ready to do your new contract. So your broker relationship, that's your name. In this case, Susan Lumley is the buyer's broker, working with as a transaction coordinator, with or without a buyer's broker agreement. 9 times out of 10, I'm not saying this is right or wrong, you land up getting a new buyer and you probably never even get to the point of having a buyer's broker agreement. Is a buyer broker agreement good? Yes, very good. And something that you should try to always get if possible, particularly when you're in a hot market like this. Because you got a buyer and all week long, you've been showing them properties and blah, blah, blah. You've taken them here, you've taken them there. Then come Saturday or Sunday, you go, oh my goodness, I finally get a day off. What are they doing Sunday afternoon? They're going to open houses. Next thing you know, they just fall in love with this house. And they see 5 other people falling in love with this house. You know what? They go, well, let's see if we can call Susan now. Oh, Susan didn't pick up. It's Sunday. Guess what happens? That guy right there sitting in that open house is not a problem. I can write the contract for you. You have any kind, did you sign anything with Susan? No, I didn't. Okay, well, good. We'll sign it. So that's the plus of a buyer's broker agreement during the time that we have such short inventory. Okay. Here we go. Number 2, in-house transaction. Buyer and seller consent to dual representation. There it is. No dual agency is created. The buyer's broker is licensed under the same qualifying broker as the seller's broker. So, that's a scenario where all of a sudden, your Dan Kaufman is, he's working, he has a listing, and before you know it, Dan has somebody walk in his open house, and he says, "Wow, okay." And they said, "Well, you know what? Alexa is my broker." Oh, great. Well, the reality is that you're both working under the same qualifying broker. That's how you identify it. Okay. You can see there, I did some kind of highlights there. Transaction broker, that's what we are. Okay. I also scratched out the word dual agency for the new brokers. We're not going there. Now, there's always exceptions to the rule, but keep this in mind that if you believe that you need to go agency or you need to go dual agency, please communicate to me, because the catch when you go agency is that you don't only put yourself at that risk, but you also put the brokerage at risk. But there are exceptions, and it more than likely will happen with a more experienced broker than a new person right out of the hopper. Okay. Additional disclosures, if applicable, check the box below. There it is, ownership of the property, conflict of interest. You've got one of your friends or one of your relatives buying a house, or even adverse, whatever, and blah, blah. But you see up here, highlighted, New Mexico 2100. So if you by chance are going to sell a house to your brother, well, you're going to want to disclose it on that form. Okay. Here's the other one here. Buyer broker has engaged in a transaction coordinator. If you go out and you hire Paula Travis to do all your transactions, okay, that's where you check and that's where you put her name. Right? Then you get to the seller's broker's disclosure. Okay. Same thing. This isn't, say, the broker's relation, that's the listing broker's name. It isn't Barker Real Estate. It's, I don't know, Duran, what's her name? I just went blank with her name. Or it may be somebody else who works there. That's where their name. And more than likely, they have a listing agreement. So they're a transaction broker with a listing agreement. Very simple. Same thing with them. Do they have any of these issues? Or hopefully on their public comments, no, excuse me, on their private comments to the agents, they'll state in there, representing my brother on this property. And hopefully they'll also upload a 2100. The other one that may pop up is, well, are they working with a transaction coordinator? This is that time that you're talking to them. And the reason that you'd kind of like to know that ahead of time, because if you leave it blank, hypothetically, you're going to get a counter offer because they got to clean up their own mess. So hopefully they're smart enough. And if you are listing in the a property, and if you are using Paula Travis as your TC, put it in your agent notes. That way I know that if I'm going to buy this property, I can, in my purchase agreement, put Paula Travis or whoever that is representing me as a TC. Okay. This is a fun one. Transaction coordinators, this gives you a disclosure of who they are. And the broker's duty is the same as yours. Okay. Now, for you to know this, everybody sometimes wants to think that they can use any TC that they want, but you can only use a transaction coordinator that also hangs their license under your QB. They're an associate broker, they're a TC. Paula Travis hangs in, I'm sorry to use your name so much, Paula, hangs her license under Tom Trujillo. So that's the person you can use. Okay, now you can have an assistant, so for like that, and they can do TC work for you, but they better be a broker and that you're not identifying them as a TC unless they claim they are a TC and they've come and basically registered with me. The only exception to that rule is if a TC is a qualifying broker. So when Miss Travis gets her qualifying broker and still works as a TC, she can go anywhere in the state. So there you go. Buyers and sellers. You can see, use your buyer's legal name. Same thing, always try to go there. So before you start writing the contract, try to find what their legal name is. You might find it in the, if you're on the course of buying side, you might go into the tax information and find out. Or you may just ask the other broker, how do they want us to write this contract? Because sometimes it might be a living trust or an estate. So things have to be written a little different. But save yourself agony, because again, it could be countered, or worst case scenario, and I've seen this many times, is that they continue to go down the whole 9 yards of doing the contract, and before you know it, you're at the closing table and you're hustling, trying to change names to make it legal as they are requested. Okay. This is the fun one. This is one that I'm sure Brian would appreciate from the days that we used to sign everything in our life. The following is provided for information purposes only. Brokers are not parties to this purchase agreement. In the olden days, when I was learning from Brian, man, our names were everywhere. We signed everything and anything. All it has here is just who you are, but no signature. So your buyer's broker name and your license. So if you're Brian Blount, you put your name there and you put your license number. Right below it is my name. And you can also see my license number as your QB 20394. If you're working out of our Clovis office, it's a different number. If you're working out of our Bell Tower office, it's a different number. And if you're working out of our Silver City and Ruidoso, it's a different number. So those are the licenses I also have hung on those areas as well. But for the most part, all you guys here will be 20394. That is our brokerage firm, Keller Williams Realty, not Keller Williams Realty Santa Fe, not Keller Williams Santa Fe. It is Keller Williams Realty. End of story. There's our office phone number and fax number. And of course, our address as such. And remember, part of professionalism, guys, is filling out the information. Nothing drives me crazier than when I get a contract that I'm trying to help a broker on, and it was written on a hood of a vehicle. I mean, those days are gone. Not to say that it doesn't happen on occasion, but you know, when they're handwritten chicken scratches all over it, oh my Lord, then you know, what's that going to look like if you land up having to go, God forbid, to the real estate commission and your contract looks like that. And I have some pretty high powered brokers who still do that. So I guess they have never learned how to type, let alone how to use a document. Everything is download and print out. So if you're one of those people, I can't see everybody. I hope I didn't embarrass anybody. Learn how to type, learn how to use the forms. There's our address, your email address, your cell, and you as a broker. Okay. They gave us now a few new lines in the past. Oh my goodness, it was a pain in the neck because all they gave us is this. But again, if Brian and I were brokers on this thing, it would give me space to put my information as well. If you're only doing it by yourself, you're only going to do one. If you're doing it with two people, then you're going to do two. Same thing with the listing broker. There's the listing broker's name. And you know, get their license. I gave you a little cheat sheet. You can find it, find their number by going to Paragon membership if you're in Paragon, and go to roster. Very simple. There, their name, their number will pop up. Same thing with their QB. You know, if you know it's there at Sotheby's, you look them up, their name, and you put it in. Look professional at all times. Make your contract look professional. A clean contract goes a long way. Okay. Same thing with their name of their company. Put their phone number, their address. The more you do for them, this is one I learned many years ago. The better that contract looks, the cleaner it looks, the better chance that other broker is going to go, hey, I want to work with Sarah because she really has a real clean contract versus wanting to work with somebody else who has chicken scratches. And the more you provide them, the more of the work that you get done for them, you stand a chance of getting a better shot at getting the deal. Believe you me, we're all human, right? So if you have a contract that's chicken scratches, or you get this wonderful purchase agreement that has all the documents signed that maybe they had in there, the tax levy, a property disclosure, any kind of addendums, HOA, and Sarah puts that kind of package together, and I'm the listing broker, woo, all day long, I want to do business there because I know that's going to show me her level of professionalism as time goes on. Okay. I highlight this always in the bottom of these pages when I do it, just so you guys always know where your form is. And also remember to always look that you're in the closest updated version right now. And I did not check today, but as of Friday, it was not in DocuSign. I don't know if it is now, but I do know it's in Instanet for those of us in Santa Fe. I haven't checked in with Pam. I assume they probably have it updated with their program in Farmington. But the bottom line is always check to make sure you're using the most updated form there. Okay, here's the fun one. And this is the new update that just came out in February. For the first time in the history of purchase agreements, we now have an index. And I said, wow, we have come to this. Originally, I kind of said, what a pain in the neck, and had a little bit of conversation with Ashley about it. She explained it's also very good for your client. So when your client is calling you up and say, Valerie, can you tell me a little bit more about what it means with counterparts? Yeah, you'd say, well, all you got to do is go to page, where's counterpart? Page 13, and it explains it. Okay. So for the newbies, if you understand everything in this index, then you got a pretty good understanding of what the contract is. That's a good little test for you. All right, here we go. New, they changed it up a little bit. The name of the buyers, as I said, ask them, how do you write your professional documents? That's always a good one. How do you like it? So example could be John and Mary Jones Living Trust. John Jones and Mary Jones trustees. So you can see they've given you enough room that if you need to put John and Mary Jones Living Trust, then you also have room for right below it, John and Mary Jones Living Trust, John Jones, Mary Jones trustees, because those are the ones that are going to be that initial there. It won't be that whole long thing that we have seen in the past. All right. All right. Here's a little help. If you go right here, as you can see, as I said, when you get the annotated, it says PAU. That stands for Purchase Agreement Updates. This is the video that I uploaded on the Tom Trujillo Real Estate of Ashley, and these are the markings. So if you go to point 25 to point 258, it's going to talk about this specific thing. So I know her video is about an hour and a half. I've gone through it a number of times. I wouldn't put that on any of you guys, but the reality is if you go to any of these that have those time codes, you can go right to it when you're in her YouTube. Here's a new one. Sold and separate. What does that mean? If a buyer or seller is married and sold and separate agreement is required by the title company and or lender, the applicable party shall deliver or cause to be delivered a sold and separate agreement to the title company. Paragraph 1. That's a new update. I've been through this. What that means is, let's say I decided I wanted to buy a property. I'm going to buy myself a really nice condo over at Quail Run. I'm not going to, but I'm the only one going to buy it. Well, before I buy it, title company wants to make sure that I've communicated to Leonora, my wife, that I'm buying this. So you got to talk to your spouse or your significant, whoever you share party dollars and cents with. That's what that sold and separate means. And I've been there. I've actually had a property in Quail Run where the owner did not want to even let his wife know he was selling it. And there's a good chance that she never knew he bought it. And that makes it very, very uneasy for everybody. Okay. This is pretty much the same, and this is really kind of the red again is kind of for the new brokers, so they can have somewhat of a template to give an idea. Here I put on this particular property, $395,000. They're going to put $50,000 down with maybe $345,000 that they would have remaining, okay, that they borrow money. There's two ways of looking at this. In this market right now, be careful of putting too much money down. Because as we all know, if I was the listing broker and I saw that they had $50,000 to put cash down and it didn't appraise, I might say, well, that's too bad. It was a $10,000 more than appraisal. I know they have 50,000. So guess what? No, we're not going to, you want it, you can pay more over appraisal. And it gives them kind of a hint. That's one way of looking at it. Second way to looking at it, these people are got some scratch in the game. So if Jeffrey has this great buyer and he's saying, you know what, they're good, they're going to drop 50 grand. Now, for me as a listing broker, I might say, yeah, these guys got skin in the game. I want to do business with them. And of course, you also have the option to be determined by the lender. If you don't know what the numbers are, they've been pre-qual, but they don't know what much they want, whether it's 10% or 20%. It might be the check marks. So I know as the new brokers, you guys work with me pretty closely when it comes to putting a new deal together, but those are just some words of the wise looking at it. New thing came up on number 3, off the market. And they separated time off the market and off the market. And basically what it says, as of date of acceptance, seller shall not take the property off the market until termination of the agreement or default by the buyer, which is not waived by seller, whichever occurs first. That means off the market. So let's put it this way. We all know that if you have a consummated agreement and you guys said, okay, we've got an accepted agreement, in truth, technically the property is off the market. But that does not eliminate you from still marketing it as pending, please show, or pending. But in the technical terms, it is off the market until there is a reason that it no longer, it goes back on the market because maybe there's a termination. You went through the ORW and so forth. But until all those issues have been resolved, it is technically off the market. They really want to point these things out that they have not done in the past, so that people have an understanding that when you're talking this purchase agreement with your buyer and they say, well, we just saw on the MLS or we saw on Zillow that it says pending. I thought it was off the market. Well, technically it is, but you have to also be able to perform through the entire contract as well before anything changes. The TOM fee, we've been through this. And for the new brokers, TOM fee is another way of perhaps moving a contract through quickly. You see it a lot, particularly when you get into cash offers, okay? And normally on these cash offers, somebody will say, oh my goodness, I want to close this as soon as I possibly can. So versus going through the whole process of waivers and objections or whatever, they may say, you know what, we're willing to give the seller $1,000, $500, whatever, in the form of a check to take the house off the market for the next 10 days to allow us to do due diligence. And we'll be happy with it. We know it's a nice house. Neighbors lived in it for years, but we just want to make sure that, you know, we're not buying a house that has a bad foundation. So versus going through all the waivers and objections, and they still can do that, by the way, they may want to go that way. Now, keep this in mind. If you do a TOM off the market, TOM fee, that money is gone. As a matter of fact, that check is actually written directly to the seller. You do not get to hold it. It does not come and sit in my office in the safe. It does not go to title. That is a, if you will, a convenience fee to the seller to take that property off the market for a period of time. Okay. And you can see right there that, again, a new form 2104 is the information sheet. And then you'll see a receipt, which is 2104B. And that you'll see in that receipt itself only has the names of the seller and the buyer. Okay. New brokers, here we go. 5, earnest money. The old rule used to be 2 to 3%. It's not in stone, but it kind of gives you, at least new brokers, an idea that, you know, if you're buying a $200,000 house, you know, 2%, you might put $4,000 down on it. You might put 6, you might put 5. It's just more of a guide than an absolute. Now, I will tell you this, is that a lot of times be careful of giving too much earnest money, and particularly if you're in a lower demographic house. If you're buying a $250,000 house, I would never recommend that you put $10,000 earnest money, even if they haven't. Because the temptation of high earnest money is also the temptation of termination, and we want to keep your money. Because that might be worth fighting for in small claims court if it's big dollars. But let's say it's a $200,000 deal and they're willing to take $1,000 or $1,500 down. Well, there's a good chance that if the deal falls apart, it's going to cost them more money to hire the attorney to go fight for that than for them just to release it. Now, for the big dogs like Brian, who sells those $2 and $3 million houses, it's not unheard of them seeing $25,000 to $30,000 earnest money, because those big houses, these people they're rolling in a whole different dollar demographic, and they want to know that if Tom Trujillo's buying a broker on the other side, they want to make sure that he's going to do everything he can, because his neck's going to be on the line if he loses that earnest money. Okay, so nothing's in stone, but those are just some little help guidelines. Right now, I also recommend that you do the wire transfer of the funds. That means you have to call the title company and say, hey, title company, can you send instructions to my buyer on how to wire transfer money? The reason being is if you went over to Fidelity today, it's all locked up and closed, and most of them are. All right. Stay away from cash. Stay away from cash. I had a deal many, many years ago of an individual that came from France. Apparently, maybe you know him, Brian. He actually apparently owned Moulin Rouge, and he came and he wanted to buy a big property, and he was wanting to do the deal with a suitcase full of money. Doesn't happen. Can't happen that way. FYI. Name the title company there, and we can see that the earnest money will be delivered by wire transfer to Fidelity National Title, no later than 2 or 3 days of acceptance. So I always tell brokers, and new brokers particularly, when you're writing a contract, the best thing you can put right next to you is a calendar. And the reason is that you want to look at those dates that, you know, you're not expecting your people to be getting earnest money to them on a Sunday or a holiday or whatever. But more importantly, as you start doing the transaction, you might want to have the weekend off, or you might know that you're going to be going out of town. So don't be putting dates in there of deadlines when you should be following up, because then you'll be like the rest of us. When you're going on your holiday, you're on that phone saying, oh, you need to do this, this, and this, and this. And it's like I've always said, if you want a deal, all you have to do is planification. And I guarantee you'll have a deal.
Hey, Tom, can your client send a personal check for earnest money to save himself the $30 to wire it? Is that basically the same thing as wiring it?
Yes, you can get a check. You can give them a check as well. Right up there, you can see it says check, cash note, or wire transfer.
Yeah, I mean,
it's fine. And a lot of times with that too, is they'll tell you just drop it in the slot. And that's pretty safe in those title companies. Okay, good question. Always, in all these areas here, this is all about earnest. Check in with your title company. New brokers, it's imperative that you start creating a relationship with a title person, somebody that you like to work with. Check with all the older brokers. Who do you like working with? You know, have they been good to you? Because if you get yourself a good title person, you get yourself a good lender, they're going to certainly make your transaction a lot easier when you have that first name basis. For me, for many years, I've used Denise Montoya over at Title. We had conversation this morning. My life is easy because if my dream team is if I have a lender, which is Annette Alvarez, and Denise Montoya is my title company. After I send the purchase agreement, I don't worry about it. All I do is keep following my deadlines for the other issues I have to work through. Okay. Property description. Okay. Address of the property, and here's how you get the legal description. Go to Paragon, go to tax, go to county, and just put the last name of the person. You know, even though you put Trujillo in there, there's probably about a bunch of Trujillos. Eventually you can scroll down and find Thomas Trujillo. But if you have somebody, I would assume it would be the same for Brown, looking at Kinsey, or Moore, but not too many good bodies, I don't know. But if you check, chances are that you will find their information, and there would be the legal description. Okay. The exhibit attached as an exhibit, the only time that you would attach something, and it might be exhibit 1, if you actually have maybe a survey that has the legal description on it. But a lot of times it's not applicable. Hopefully you're in Santa Fe County, Los Alamos County, Rio Arriba County, San Miguel County, whatever. Okay. The new thing too that you have to identify, and they finally have got it cleaned up enough, because there's nothing worse than you trying to communicate to your new client, oh, by the way, I'm going to charge 6%, or I'm going to earn, particularly when you're on the listing side, I'm going to charge 6%, and they also charge you for gross receipts tax. First thing they goes, oh my God, it's 15%. No, it's not that. What it is, it's on the services rendered. So when I talk to even my buyers and sellers, I said, you know, it's no different than if you go to get your car repaired, they're going to charge you for the services of that mechanic. They're going to give you gross receipts. That's all it is. Same thing for services rendered by a broker. 9 times out of 10, this is picked up on the seller side, but you must identify a gross receipts tax location code. Where do you find it? Okay, couple places you can go. You can certainly go to Paragon, look for resources, look for gross receipts tax, and there's a PDF. Or if you're real lazy, you can always go to the Tom Trujillo Real Estate and go to my PDFs, and there it is. Print it, download it, and save it. And there they'll have every location code from Albuquerque, Bernalillo County, all the way to Zuni, I guess. All right. Here's the type of properties that you're looking at: site built, manufactured, modular, off-site. Look at this word up here, manufactured. Okay. This is not a mobile home. The manufactured house is something that may have come on a trailer, but they built it before they rolled it out. A mobile home, the wheels are attached to the chassis. There's the difference. Here's your form. And other rights: convey wind, solar, water, mineral rights. For the most part, you're not going to run into this a lot. But one that is popping up quite a bit is basically when you start getting down here on solar panels. We'll get to that in a minute. Okay. We're going to get to fixtures. We all know that from all the days of being in our classes way back when. Fixtures were things that shouldn't be removed from the wall because they're permanently anchored. So, you know, if you have a curtain rod that is permanently anchored, that's a fixture. Now the curtains aren't, because they come right off that curtain rod. But the easiest way to remember what's a fixture or not is if you take it off the wall and it leaves a hole and it needs to be repaired, it was a fixture. And I'm not advocating that when you get a listing that you not talk to your listing to your sellers and say, I know you really love that antique curtain rod up there. If you're going to take it with you, please remove it, patch the holes, or put something else up there. Okay. Same thing happens when you go to that chandelier. But there's some cool things that they put in here that you can start seeing right there below: attached window coverings. not including the curtains. Okay, so the curtains are personal, but the rods are fixture. Murphy beds. This is a new one for me. Now they want you to include the mattress. I said, why in the world would you want a mattress on somebody's Murphy bed? The rumor is that sometimes they're specially designed, and so that they fit the exact Murphy bed. Central vacuums to include all hoses and attachments. If you ever sold out in Quail Run, you know they have those built-in vacuum systems through there. So make sure that when you're looking at all this stuff and you're even on the listing side, you better have all those things because these are considered fixtures to go with the house. Here's that solar panel system. If leased by the seller, lien may exist. We're going to get a little bit more to solar panels, but they're not going to be taking those things off the roof without damaging the roof. Same thing goes here with the antennas, the satellite dishes. And this is my favorite one, the TV wall mounts. Okay, I've been through that. We're taking our TV. Great. 2 days before walkthrough, there it was, holes in the wall. Not only did they take the television, they took the mounts that were permanently attached. Ugh. So the mounts are attached, that's permanent. So if they're planning to take the TV when you're talking to your on the listing side, and they're saying, yeah, we're going to take our TV. Well, great. Are you going to fix, are you taking the mount as well? Because if you are, make sure that you fix it. But all right, here we go. Here's the new stuff, personal property. Again, you can go to the update that Ashley has. There's the numbers at 609 to 759. Unattached window coverings. These are things that you say we want, the check marks. These are new, audio component and video components. They're separated. But as a new broker, more than likely, you're going to want the decorative mirror hanging over the sinks and vanities. You may want the dryer and the washer and the freezer. You're going to see those kind of things in the listing agreement when you're, or excuse me, in the listing when you go on MLS and see what they're going to leave or not. So even though they may not want to leave the washer and dryer, you may want to negotiate it and you may want them. There's free ranges, kitchen refrigerators, and other refrigerators. They did that. And if you guys look, you'll see now on all the contracts on the purchase agreement, they have the S in parentheses, meaning plural. Where did that come from? That came from the situation that they said refrigerators. Now they've labeled them. They used to just say refrigerators. And so the person checked it. And lo and behold, they did the walkthrough and they said, wow, what happened to the beer cooler refrigerator in the garage? Well, no, that wasn't that just one of them. Well, you didn't specify it. You said refrigerators. We checked off on refrigerators. So bring that beer cooler back. So they have broken it out. Here's a new fun one, garage door remotes. I certainly have bought a number of those in my lifetime. Now you can put the number there. If it's only one, put one. Because if the number of garage door opener remotes is left blank, seller's obligation shall be no more than one working remote. If you have two, put two, but three, all right? They've added some things like the unattached fire grates and the unattached fire screen as more personal property because you can pick those up and take them with you. And of course, the hot tubs and the pools, right? Everybody holding up okay? Let me take a drink of water. I'm getting a little hoarse. When you're writing this agreement, guys, and it says in the listing on MLS, hot tub goes with the house, you know, you might want to be looking at that kind of stuff and your buyer says, we don't want that old stinky hot tub. Well, that's where you write it. The following items are excluded from the sale. Hot tub, seller to remove prior walkthrough. Oh, get it out. We don't want to mess with it. It's all yours. Here we go. This is a new one. Cash loans or seller financing. This is always a fun one. Starting off with cash, they changed it a little bit. In the past, we used to just put a check mark where it said cash. Now, buyer shall purchase the subject property for cash and certify that the funds are readily available. Is it in their banking account, their saving account? Contingent on closing of a cash out refinance. Maybe they're selling a home before they can buy it, but when they sell it, they're going to do it all cash. Or other, maybe it's stocks, maybe it's a retirement, maybe it's 401. So they're kind of putting us a little bit more in a box that when you're talking to your buyer and your buyer says, we're going to pay cash. Well, how do you propose getting cash? Well, we're going to do it. I just finished doing a deal, all cash deal. And basically it was all cash. And it turns out that the individual actually is going to be borrowing against his existing home. Well, he didn't say that. He showed me all his documents and he was worth well over $1 million. But at the end of the day, it would have been nice to know that he would have checked other and says, well, refinancing existing home for a balance of funds. We're okay. I'm not worried about it. But the reality is we're now putting a little bit more in the box and you have to get a little bit more information from your buyer on what we have. No later than blank dates after the date of acceptance, buyer shall provide seller with verification of funds. I've always liked the word 3 days in there. Come on, if you're really going to get cash, we're talking not somebody printing their bank statement from the internet. People try to do that. And the one reason you don't really find that as a valued verification of funds is they can print it today and go buy a new car tomorrow. And so what they had on their checking account or their savings account is no longer there. So blah, 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 make sure that they deliver proof of funds, okay? Loans, here we go, fun ones. These are the primary loans that you guys are looking at. A conventional loan, which is the one they're going to kind of a regular vanilla loan. They might go via FHA, VA, or the New Mexico Finance Authority. Now, these last three always come with a little bit of cooties, particularly when you start getting into inspections, because a lot of them are a little bit more stringent than what you normally see on a conventional loan. Believe me, when you get into an FHA, you'll understand that you're going to have to step up your inspections to make sure that it meets the guidelines from FHA and VA. Okay. This is a good time to have the discussion with the lender who will get a copy of the signed agreement. So I throw that in there for the new brokers. When you get it all signed, you're going to be sending the purchase agreement, if it's got a loan, to the lender. And you're definitely going to be sending the purchase agreement and any addendum that relates to this agreement, I mean, in terms of money, to your title people as well. Okay. You might also be requested other things from your title. They may want to see HOA documents. They may want to see septics, whatever. But this is a very good time that if you're going to be partnering up with some title company, that's the time to really get working with them. Buyer shall provide seller with a pre-qualification letter no later than 3 days. This is always a fun one, and particularly for newer brokers, when their buyer says, you know what, I'm going to use my bank out of Chicago. You can't tell people where to borrow their money, but you can say, well, that's fine. Can your lender please get me a pre-qualification letter tomorrow? There is not a lender, and I love our people that we have here at MSA, be it Annette or Sandra. You can call them in the morning for a pre-qual letter and they'll have it to you in the afternoon. So a pre-qual letter basically is nothing more than them running the credit report to make sure that they don't have something hanging, okay? So can't direct, but suggest, if you're buying here in Santa Fe, you might want to really consider finding a local lender if possible. It will make the transaction much smoother and all of us will be easier to communicate. Can't tell them not to, but you can always suggest it. Okay. Buyer's failure to deliver a pre-qual letter to the seller within the time frame stipulated shall be considered a default of this agreement. You remember this morning I had the conversation earlier today that I had a broker who missed the sending the letter to the listing broker. That was not the intention. Maybe it got lost in spam. We don't know exactly what happened, but she put the offer in on the 17th of February. She had a pre-qual letter dated February 18th, and somehow along the way she didn't get it out. Now the seller is now saying you were in default, you didn't do it. I'm terminating the agreement and I want the earnest money. There's some things that are going to change with us in a few minutes. We'll see. I'll talk about default. If the buyer changes lenders, here's a good one. The buyer needs to notify the seller and provide a new pre-qualification letter within 2 days. So let's say hypothetically you started off with Sandra and all of a sudden your lender decided to go to somewhere different. Maybe he's going to go to Annette. Well, if you're changing lenders, it's going to fall on your clock to make sure you get that new letter within 2 days of changing lenders. If you don't, you could be in default and this whole thing can go down the toilet. Okay. And the buyer shall cooperate and act in good faith of obtaining final approval for the loan as outlined in the pre-qual letter. So read through all this. This gives you some dates in there. But naturally, as a good broker, you're going to constantly be in touch with that lender. How are we coming along? Is everything looking good? Are we looking like we're going to get the loan? Those kind of things. Because if you just wait to the very last, I guarantee you that's when things fall apart. You know, again, thinking about it doesn't get it done. So, you know, you have that calendar, you see your closing dates, work it, work it, work it. I have a tendency to put as much of the information that I need to get done on my side of the fence as early on in the agreement that I possibly can do it. I'm looking within 10 days to get my inspector in there. I'm looking at trying to get all my finances and everything done as quickly as possible, even though I may have a 30 or 45 day closing. Why? Because if I get 2 weeks and all of a sudden the only thing I'm lacking is this and this, it's easier to work on that one item than everything hitting you throughout the calendar. So try to get it done. The quicker you are, the better it will be. In the event the lender determines buyer will not qualify for the loan by settlement date, buyer shall deliver seller a written rejection letter for the lender. That's the rejection letter, no later than blank days before settlement. Or if not otherwise indicated, meaning that blank, okay, lost my not indicated, 3 days before the settlement date. You'll automatically go there. Now, this one has changed up quite a bit because the reality is market is changing in various locations. And as we get closer to the settlement dates, I understand that you can't even get a settlement a commitment letter in some parts of northern New Mexico for 90 days. So things change, all right? So at the very least, that used to be my favorite word was 5. I didn't put it in there, but that was my favorite because that was on my calendar. Wow. Are we good to go 5 days before we're ready to close? Are we good to go? Are we good to go? Are we good to go? I'm bugging them by 7 days. Go, are we good to go? Are we good to go? You know what? Because, you know, I want that commission check. Seller financing for new brokers. If you get into a seller financing situation, please contact me because it takes a little bit of knowing how to do it. All right. But seller financing can be financed and secured by a real estate contract, a mortgage, or deed of trust. Now, we've heard all those terms in our classes over the years, but the reality is that when you really get into a seller financing situation, you need to be buttoned up with it. You need to make sure you have somebody who is with escrow. But lastly, and more importantly, if you have a buyer who's really hell-bent on doing seller financing, that's a good time for them to recommend legal counsel. You better get somebody who's going to write up that real estate contract for you, or you better get somebody who can really write a good mortgage that is going to benefit you. And oh, by the way, we're going to still tie in with an escrow account there. Good class to take. You're going to hear me say this throughout. Just because I teach these classes here, these are the quick tutorials. That doesn't fault anybody from taking a anatomy of a purchase agreement. You need the CEUs anyway. Believe me, I still take them because I like to hear what other brokers take as well. So always look for classes. This is the one that keeps us out of jail for a little bit. Important notice to the seller. Buyer is not responsible for verifying the authenticity of the pre-qualification or proof of funds letter. or determining the buyer's credit worthiness. So that's kind of the get out of jail card. Even though they may have given us a letter of verification, it is not our responsibility back that we have to verify. Now, that doesn't mean that they can write something out and do a Photoshop on it. That means you are not the one holding the bag anymore. This is another fun one: buyer sale, closing and funding contingency. This agreement is contingent upon the closing and funding of buyer's property located. So in a hot market like we're in right now, these are hard to stick. These are hard to stick. But in a softer market, a person may consider selling their house based on the buyer selling their house somewhere else. Truth be said, it's better that if they already have it under contract and there's a closing date, you got a little stronger contract that way. If they haven't even put it on the market, then it's a whole new thing. Because at that point, they get back to the house and they realize that their broker tells them, oh, you need to paint the house, you need to fix the cracks in the, it's a little tougher. So again, new brokers, if you get into a contingency, let me know. The truth be said, in this market, trying to buy a house contingent on selling another one is an uphill climb. And so when you're talking to your buyers and they say, oh, we love this house, we want to put an offer on it, but the only way we can buy this house is when we sell ours, that's when you look at them and says, is it on the market? And if they say no to you, say, well, you know, not that I'm afraid to do this, but I'll tell you, it's an uphill climb. Do you have any other financial resources? Well, we have our 401k. Well, you might want to consider that. You might want to figure out another way of buying it. Okay. Then go sell your house and put your money back into the bank or wherever. All right. Appraisal. Fun one. As we all know, if you are borrowing money or if your buyer is borrowing money, there's going to be an appraisal. No way around it. So that basically is a situation today that many or most of the houses here that go on the market, they land up going through appraisal. Catch is this these days is that because there is so little on the market, so many things are selling above appraisal. And if you guys remember way back when we were talking about that offer and we had that $50,000 down, that's where I was talking about being a little careful of showing your cards too much. Because the buyer shall not be obligated to purchase or incur a penalty of forfeiture of earnest money if the property doesn't appraise. But what does that do? What it does is that when you get notice and say, guess what, we're not going to, your house did not appraise. Do you want to sell it to us at the appraisal? Do not be surprised in today's market when the seller says, no, if you want it, you can buy it. You figure out where you're going to come up with the $10,000 difference. If not, bye-bye. Because we've got other people down the street who are willing to buy. The other thing that's happening with appraisal, I had a very good conversation with a good friend of mine, Dave Friesser, is so much cash that's out there. Appraisal is jumping everywhere in Santa Fe. Because once it sells, when my friend Brian Blount goes and sells a $1.2 million house that probably would have sold for $900,000 last year, but he sells it for $1.2 million cash. Guess what happened to that neighborhood? He just have changed the appraisal numbers big time. So that happens on occasion. As it says there on little I, all loan programs require an appraisal. 2, cash and seller finance purchase, the buyer requires to be indicated. And cash or buyer does or does not require an appraisal. So even if you're doing cash, you may say does not require appraisal. That's kind of sweet, if you will, in this market at this point, because it's basically telling the seller, man, they offered me big money. I don't even think it's worth that money, but they're not willing to they just bought it without an appraisal. That doesn't preclude them from having their inspections, because you cannot take inspections away from people. They are allowed to do inspections, even though they say as is, there's no such thing as is, they have the right to do inspections. This gives you the options, again, as I said, with dates and times in there. So read this one very well on when you can expect this or not. Here's a fun one, the square footage. The appraisal contingency does not allow for termination based on discrepancy between representation or assumptions about square footage and square footage as indicated in the appraisal. More and more you start seeing this, you'll actually even see it on the listings in your MLS that if square footage is an issue for you, please go have it measured. We as a broker, we have no party to appraisal. All right. This is the fun one, guys, getting down to it. Settlement and signing date. Cash deal probably for the new brokers, probably can still be done in 30 days. If it isn't too many contingencies like a septic or big HOA or big inspections and so forth, but a cash deal still probably can be done in 30 days. You definitely want to hold hands with your with your title people to make sure that's possible. If you're dealing with a lender right now, they're backed up. We're probably talking anywhere from 45 as high as maybe 60 days these days. I just put together a cash deal. I thought I was going to close it on the 8th. They already called me saying we can't get it done until the 15th. So, days move. What does that mean? On or before the settled date, party shall complete the following. Sign and deliver the responsible closing all documents required. There you go for the transaction. That may, of course, be the purchase agreement and any addendums to it, and provide for the delivery of all required funds before we can close anything. And the funding date is normally the same date or maybe the day after, depending on how it kind of rolls. For new brokers, I always tell you guys, try to get in there and get your closing date and get your closing officer say, we want to close in the morning or we want to close early afternoon, because come 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, to get it recorded is a little bit of an uphill climb with the county. And even more so these days with COVID, because it doesn't become property to the new buyer until it is recorded by the county. Okay. You can see it right there. Funds go to must be distributed by the closing officer. That includes your paycheck. So for those of you who have listened to Paul on compliance, learn compliance like it means something to you, because at the end of the day, if you get your documents correct and it's all uploaded and you get that distribution of funds sent to you and the dollars and cents are all correct, you're going to be a happy girl when they do that, or boy, when they distribute those funds, because your check's going to be cut right there to it. But you can see at the end of the day, the closing offer has to record with the county clerk. Possession date in mind for the new brokers. I've always said at time funding requirements are satisfied. And if you land up getting caught up a little further than this, unless otherwise agreed in writing, possession date may be surrendered by the buyer through an occupancy agreement. We're seeing a little bit more occupancy agreements than we've had in the past. That basically means that you, aside from the purchase agreement, you have agreed with the seller that he or the buyers may stay longer in the property through a occupancy agreement, kind of a mini rental agreement, that they may stay there for an extra 2 or 3 days. But you get into an occupancy agreement, that's time to call Tom and says, how do we put that together? We'll be going through these to the new brokers one by one, so that you guys can get real smart and do all this stuff without me. Okay. Let's see where we're at. Same thing you can see right there in pink, the occupancy agreement 2201. When you guys get this annotated copy, I highly recommend that you create a little notebook, print these particular things out, and bore yourself to sleep each night reading one of those little agreements. That's how I go to bed every night. Sometimes I get to read legalese from issues that I'd rather not be involved with. 1031 exchanges, deferred exchange. I love 1031s, particularly if I have the buyer or if I'm the listing guy that's going to get the buyer. It's a guarantee it's going to sell in a short, very, very short. What it means, 1031s is that you have investment property in one location, you sold it, you have 45 days in the new location to find a property of like kind, more or less, to buy something. So if you get a 1031, there's a good chance you're going to sell them something, because they need to move that money in 45 days or at least part of that process. You get into 1031, we'll have further discussion. Examination, title, and liens is assessment. The buyer has the right to select the title company. However, this one is countered sometimes. Play nice. Rule is that the seller shall order a title company from XYZ title company. Okay. Often in Santa Fe, as you guys know, have heard me say, I use Fidelity a lot, but sometimes I'll get an offer, okay, that says Prima title. I play nice 9 times out of 10 because I've known all these title people for so many years. I don't care where I close. Unless you get in a situation where your title company's had to do a lot of work for you and they have a lot of documents, old abstracts, things that took a lot of heavy lifting to get the title commitment. I might counter back and say, you know, this is the reason that I want to use this person is they've done that and so forth. If you play nice, you 9 times out of 10 can use the title people you like. And again, you can see that you have to order that. You can see it there. The seller shall order the title commitment from whatever title company within 5 days of acceptance. And the earnest money, after the title has been, the buyer shall have it in 5 days. So they have a chance to review it, excuse me. The title acceptance, they get reviewed for 5 days. And then if there's any issues or things, 5 days. Read through it. Those are just my kind of little highlighted numbers I like. Nothing's in granite, guys, but you know, I like to move it along as quickly as I can. Something new. Assessment. Buyer may choose to close subject to assessment or terminate this agreement. If a buyer chooses to close, the current installment of assessments shall be prorated to the settlement signing date, and buyer shall assume future installments. If buyer timely terminates, any earnest money delivered shall be refunded to the buyer. Where you get into assessments, HOAs, even some of the prorations. So just be careful with that kind of stuff. That you want to make sure that the disclosures are out there, that people understand what they are buying. Okay. Here's the title commitment. This is the new one. This one makes me a little crazy. In the event the title company, through no fault of the buyer or seller, is unable to issue a title commitment at least 5 days, this is my number, prior to the settlement or signing date, or if no otherwise indicated, at least 5 days prior to the settlement date. So if that was blank, they would say 5 days anyway to the settlement date. Then the settlement signing date shall automatically be extended to. That's a blank. Could be 4 days, could be 10 days, or if not indicated, up to 14 days. So those are got to be careful because if you leave those blank and you can't tie it in there, they've got an automatic 5, then they got an automatic 14. Now, this is the one that I'm talking about where that title commitment is really depending on the variant in the market. I don't know how quick everybody is up there in Farmington these days, but I can tell you, Rio Reba, I've heard of one, they couldn't get a title commitment for 120 days. So those are those conversations you definitely want to talk to your title people about, because you want to be as upfront to your buyer, and you want to really be upfront with the seller that if you need 90 days to get that title commitment, do it. Be upfront with it, because otherwise what happens if it's like in this case, I only put 5 days in Santa Fe, but let's say 5 days in Rio Reba, that's unrealistic. And guess what happened to my contract at that point? I have defaults that I'd either have to amend or I'd have to do various extension agreements. And you can see down here, I've highlighted in pink, extension agreement 5104 will cure any of those dates that you may need. We're getting there, guys. Seller shall satisfy any judgments and lien, including but not limited to all mechanical and material mens liens or record of their funding date. Okay. So I highlighted that a lot, guys, because when you're with the buyer and you're sitting with them and you're talking about the purchase agreement, this is the time to really kind of find out, you guys don't have any judgments or any liens to your knowledge on your property, do you? It's better if they say, yes, we do. Let's get them cleaned up before we go to closing. Because I've been down the altar with brokers on the last day. We're ready to sell the property and we find out at that time that there's a lien on that property because they had done some contracting work and somebody didn't get paid. Messes up everything. So have that real earnest conversation with your buyers and saying, hey guys, if you have anything like that, I'm not trying to, make you feel bad or anything. Let's talk about it now so we can get it cleaned up. Okay. You saw this. Okay. Best one is, of course, we learned this all in our real estate school, general warranty deed. That's the highest and the best. But there are times that you may be in a special warranty deed or other kind of deeds as well. Okay. That's discussion with your title people. Prorations. That is the one that is always the fun one. That always includes, that's your water's been on half the month, electricity's been on 4 or 5 days. These are the prorations that your title people take care of for you on that. All right. One that is always caught up here on occasion, because I've lived this one, is any equipment rental, service agreements. That's your alarm system. Does it stay with the house? Do you want that? My favorite one is propane tanks. That technically, that propane tank can be construed as personal property. And I've had situations that all of a sudden the buyer goes to his new house, and just as he's ready to move in his new house, the propane company's there taking the propane tank. Well, this belongs to us. Doesn't belong to you. Well, I need propane. Okay, well, tell you what. Or the person may have bought the propane tank versus leasing it, and they're loading it up on their truck. I see Darlene shaking her head. That sounds like something that's kind of close to her heart. Been there, done that one, right? Okay. So just check these things out. These highlighted things, reread them a few times. Cost to be paid. Here you go. And again, my little cheat sheet there. When you go to Ashley's video, you can go to 2130 to 2959, and she'll be talking about this item here. We have a few things in here for the new brokers, the red check marks. These are ones that you can pretty much not get in too much trouble with, as you can see. And a lot of times I'll put down here a little catch-all, as required by lender. Boom, buyer take care of it. Closing fee, 9 times out of 10, everybody pays their own. Won't have to worry too much about pro data or legal or special for the most part. If there is legal, then you may have to check one of those boxes. This is a brand new one. Prior title policy and retrieval fee and title policy cancellation fee. The forms were out before there has been final agreement by the title company of who pays what. So hypothetically, let's say that you go through this whole deal and it falls apart, but title's already done policy. Well, who pays for that? The buyer or the seller? At this point, I defaulted to the seller. I'm waiting for a counter probably on that. But right now, that's again a discussion with your title company. I've had that with Fidelity. They say, well, we haven't gotten there yet. So, we still eat it. But they too, like the rest of us, they don't want to eat their fees and their time. Buyer's recording fees on the buyer side and sellers on the seller. Same thing with title commitment. Seller pays for the insurance, the owner policy, and the title commitment. And if you have a loan, it's going to be on the mortgage side. Mortgagee is on the buyer side. And always deletions 1 through 4. Those are those famous ones people ask me about. Those are exceptions to the policy. I always dump it on over to the seller. And for all of those of you who have begged me, Tom, what does that mean? You can go to my Tom Trujillo Real Estate, go to the PDFs, and there's a nice little copy there for you to share with your clients. Same thing here, transfer of HOA, that can go both ways. That's why I put it in yellow. I try to push everything always on the seller if I'm on the buyer side. And they have just changed just a little bit. The home warranty plan, we don't use a lot of them here in Santa Fe. Other places they do, but it's in a new location up here in the miscellaneous fees. It's also further down in the contract. 7 and 8, one more page to go after this. FIRPTA. This is always the fun one. Everybody go, what does FIRPTA stand for? And of course, that stands for the foreign investment in real estate. And what it came down to, there were people years ago for the new brokers who basically were buying real estate and this country and then turning around and selling it, and they're kind of laundering their money. So this was a way that they finally said, wait a minute, if you are a foreign seller, not a buyer, then if you are selling a property for more than $300,000, guess what? We're holding money back at the title company to make sure you're paying your taxes. That's all it is. Or they have a certification that says that they have. Your title company will take care of that 9 times out of 10. But be aware that, if you have somebody with a very strong, let's see, my case was British accent, I can recall saying, by chance, are you an American citizen? No, I'm not. Oh, okay. Well, we got to make sure that now that you sold the property, that, he was well aware of it. 9 times out of 10, people from other countries are much more versed about it than we are. Insurance contingency. This is the one that really people blow off it too often, blow by it. But the buyer shall make application for insurance. I always like to put 10 days after the acceptance. That's the one I say, this is your first one that you've got to take care of, buyer. You got to make sure this house is insurable. Okay? And if you don't, we're going to have another deadline here to say that you've done that within 20 days. If you don't in 20 days and you didn't check into it, you're going to buy this house with or without insurance, period. What that really does is between that 10 and 20 days, it really gives them 20 days to make sure that the house has no problems, that it wasn't in a fire, or that it was unreasonable hail damage, or too many roofs, too many things. Believe me, the insurance company will say, yeah, we can't insure this house. I got into one a couple years ago where they were buying over at the Glorietta location. They were having a heck of a time of buying fire insurance because it was right in the middle of the forest. That's what the people loved. They wanted that house right in the middle of the forest. It was perfect. The problem was insurance companies would not insure it because of the fire hazard, the fire danger. Ultimately, they found it, but it cost them a lot of money to do it. If they really would not have wanted that house during that period of time that we had the 20 days, we could have walked out to say the property is uninsurable for us at the rate that we're willing to pay. So there's those kind of things like that. Here's that survey, or ILR. ILR just means Improvement Location Report for the new brokers. Basically what that means, it's a survey, but it's been recorded so many dog times, it's in a computer by now. It's not the full-blown survey that we were all taught in those classes. Okay, so what you really want to do, whatever is to satisfy the title. The party who agrees to pay for the survey ILR, in doing so, even if the tract does not close. Okay, so remember that. So if there is a survey ordered, regardless who ordered it, they're going to pay for it, even if the deal goes south. So I normally check off in mine an ILR or other to satisfy title. Sometimes I may look for a staked or flagged. We don't have that. Yeah, flagged corners. If it's a large parcel of land, El Dorado, there's not a lot of fences out there and so forth. So you might want to say, hey, I just want an ILR, but I would like the surveyor to go out there and flag it. And of course, all those surveys I put on the seller side to pay for, but at least that gives them an idea of, what they're going to pay for. And again, you have delivery deadlines. This is the one that I got caught up with that other broker on, that they missed their delivery deadlines. They turned right around and said, we're terminating the agreement. You've defaulted on the agreement. Okay. Disclosure and documents. There you go, Tom Trujillo, PDFs, you can find them. There you go, lead-based. That's for the big brochure that they lead-based, what is it, code has. You'll see it all the time. It says, did you give them a lead-based code? Yes, I did. And it's a big old hairy book. Normally you can just download the PDF that I have on my website and send it to them and have them initial one part or another. New brokers, I scratched out public improvement districts because presently there are none in Santa Fe. There are some in Albuquerque, but none in northern New Mexico at this point. There's your HOA. These are the fun ones. You have homeowners associations all over the place. The most important thing that you should realize is seller shall provide buyer, that's yours, the listing broker, any of the specific documents. But trust me, as a good buyer's broker, you're going to want to look at these things. And if you don't have an information form, you're going to want to send it to your buyers. Take a look at this. Take a look. Same thing when you get into condo associations. You're looking at doing resale certificates. If you're going to get into that, there are a lot of brokers in our office who've done a lot of condos and a lot of HOAs. Will hook you up, or last but not least, I'll be available to you. Okay. Same thing with septics, new forms, 5120. You're going to find septics all over this place. Wells, the occupant property. This is tenants occupying property after closing. So if you're buying a house and let's say there was a casita on it, there may be a tenant in there. Well, you got to make sure that you're aware of the estoppel certificate. In other words, has your seller disclosed everything in the agreement? Is there an existing lease? Is there, is there a termination time that they're going to go? All that's there in the 6103. Here's that famous one I talked about, solar panels. More and more, you can see that you can go out there, and we all do it. We show a great house, so forth like that, but we never kind of get up on the hill to look. Oh my God, there's solar panels up there. Did they buy them outright, the seller? Are they leasing them from a company? Those are the things that need to be able to be ironed out ahead of time. Okay. So this is always that fun little box. This is those deadlines again. You can see I put seller property disclosure. This is the way that I like doing it. It's not in granite. You can put dates, but I like going days of acceptance versus a hard cold date, because if the acceptance is done later than you think, then those hard dates are right on top of you. So delivery deadline, 3 days upon acceptance. Objection, 3 days upon delivery. So be careful with that, because if they deliver it to you one day, that means you only have 3 days to return it. And 3 days upon delivery again. That's the way I like working it. It's not in granite. You can see these are things that you might have to have documents. Maybe it's water rights. Maybe it's well document. That's very common. HOA documents, definitely very common. And condo documents. And notice here that when I did my contract, I said I was closing date of May 25th on this particular contract. So I worked backwards, because if you go right to the middle of this, it says buyer has no less than 7 days from receipt of the HOA disclosure certificate to object. So I said, okay, I'm closing on the 25th. All right, I'll need at least 3 days to make sure they can resolve it. So if I needed that, then I probably need a few days for them to deliver it. So I gave them to the 7th of May to get them delivered to me so I could look at them. And I got 5 days. Okay, things look good. A couple of problems. You guys can resolve it by then. But you don't want to get caught at the last day trying to do this thing on the 24th of May. Okay. Here we go. Buyer's failure to timely object or terminate, underline, based on the above documents shall be deemed a waiver of buyer's right to object or terminate based on the above document. It shall not be considered a default. So you got a little working room there, guys. Here's my lecture or my request and wishes for you. And we'll go through this, new brokers, in our classes on creating calendars. Sit down with the calendar, and as you start working through your contract, you start filling it in on your calendar to make sure you're not bumping into yourself. So tomorrow, fun, we get to do the last 8 pages. I'm pretty sure everybody's pretty brain dead by now. Comments, answers, requests, tears. There you go. Pamela Woolley, how did I do? Okay. Give me a C- maybe.